AI never sleeps, and this week has been absolutely insane. We have a new top open source model which is as good as the best proprietary models out there like Grok 4 and Gemini 2.5 Pro. We have a new open source image generator that's designed just like the GPT-4o image model, so it can generate text in images really well. Tencent releases this open source AI which can build interactive 3D worlds with just a text prompt or image. We have a new deepfake generator which is extremely accurate, and you just need one reference image of a person. ChatGPT has a new free feature which is really useful in helping you learn. We have a new open source image generator which can create super realistic photos. Like, these actually look real and they don't have that perfect polished look. This AI is gonna destroy my job. It can create full explainer videos on any article or document you upload. DeepMind releases an insanely detailed model of planet Earth and a lot more, so let's jump right in. First up, Tencent Hunyuan releases X-Omni. This is actually pretty huge. It's kind of like an open source GPT level image generator. In other words, it has a much better understanding of natural language and is able to generate a lot more accurate images, especially involving text. So this is an autoregressive image generator, exactly like the GPT-4o image generator. So this is not the traditional diffusion model like Stable Diffusion and Flux. Now here are some sample generations. You can see, like for this poster, it's also able to render the text very accurately. Same with this one. Although there are some misspellings, this is still really good for an open source image generator. The text is way better than, previous diffusion models like Flux. Here's another example. Notice the text is perfect. And notice it can generate all different types of images like this. Here are some additional examples with text, and you can see most of the text in these examples are actually correct. This is extremely hard to do with other models except for GPT-4o, especially if you have a ton of text in the image. So this is really impressive. And then it can also do Chinese text like this. And most of these characters are actually correct. The nice thing is, if you scroll up to the top of the page, they've released a free Hugging Face space for you to try this out online. So let's click into this. Now there are two spaces you can choose from. This one supports English text rendering, this one supports Chinese. So let's click on this one, and it's pretty simple to use. Here's where you would enter your text prompt, and then we also have some advanced settings over here, but I just tend to leave this at the default. So let's try this prompt, a formal letter in a professional tone with the following text. To Edward Robertson, aligned to the left. Underneath, place this date, also aligned to the left, and then also add all of this text in the body of the letter. Now note that this does take a while to generate. More specifically, at least on here, it says 182 seconds. So let's wait for this to finish. Alright, and here is what we get. Most of the text is correct. There are some mistakes here, like this should not be a semicolon, this should be a comma, so it seems to have trouble with punctuation. Like there should be a period here, and there should be a comma here, but I mean the error rate is still much lower than all the other open source models we have, like Stable Diffusion or Flux or Hydream. Especially with this much text, they just all hallucinate and misspell a ton of words, but this one is actually really good. Now the nice thing is, in addition to this Hugging Face space, they've also released all the models and the code already. So if you click this button, it takes you to their GitHub page, and if you scroll down a bit, this contains all the instructions on how to download and run this on your computer. Plus note that this is under the Apache 2 license, which has very minimal restrictions. You can basically use this for anything, including commercial usage. Now they don't specify the VRAM requirements here, but if you click on this Hugging Face page, notice that the model is like 20 gigabytes in size, so you might need 24 gigabytes of VRAM or above in order to run this. Anyways, if you're interested in reading further or trying this out online, I'll link to this main page in the description below. Next up, Tencent releases Hunyuan World 1.0. This is a free and open source AI that can create panoramic images or immersive and explorable 3D environments which you can interact with. So here is their showcase reel. As you can see here, you can generate a 3D world with just a text prompt, or you can also upload an image for it to use as a reference. and you can actually walk around and explore this 3D scene. Now over here, they showed a bit more capabilities like adding some physical simulations like this, or also adding objects to the scene which you can control with a controller, or you can also add a character to the scene which you can control with a controller. But note that as for right now, these capabilities are not available to most of us yet. What you can do is just generate the 3D environment. The nice thing is you can try this out online. So if you click over here, this takes you to their online platform where you can actually generate both panoramic images or an interactive 3D world. So for example, over here, you can just upload this reference image and then click generate, and it would generate an entire panoramic image from this scene. How crazy is that? It did this from just one image of this tree, but it's able to kind of guess and kind of generate what the rest of the scene would look like. So if I drag my mouse all the way across, you can see here is what it looks like. And notice that everything is super sharp and detailed. This is definitely the highest resolution panoramic image generator I've seen so far. So that is one example. Here's another example. If I upload this image, here is what we get. Notice that it also preserves kind of this digital art style from the original image. How cool is that? Again, this is a super detailed and high resolution panoramic image. All right, here's another tricky one. So if you upload this watercolor Chinese painting, the original image is over here, but it's able to kind of generate the rest of the scene based on the original image. And look how detailed and beautiful and coherent everything is. This is so impressive. Now, in addition to uploading an image, over here you can also select this option to enter a text prompt. So for example, let's try something like floating islands in the sky, and then let's click generate. And notice for this online platform, it's pretty fast, so it only takes like under a minute to generate a panoramic image. Alright, here is what we get. And would you look at that? Indeed, we have a floating island in the sky. And if I rotate the scene, by the way, this looks strangely similar to the volcanoes in Indonesia, if you know what I'm talking about. But yeah, here's another super detailed 3D scene which you can generate with just a text prompt. Now up here, instead of generating just a panoramic image, you can also click on this to generate an interactive 3D world. So for example, over here, I can move my mouse around like this, but I can also use my WASD keys to move around. However, note that how much you can move around is actually very limited. So notice that if I walk forward too much, then the frame gets highlighted in purple or blue, which basically signifies that I've hit the boundary. So I can't go any further than this. And then here's what the back of the scene looks like. So that's one example. Here's another example where if you upload this image, here's the 3D world it generates from that. Again, a very detailed and high resolution scene. Now let's try moving around. Very cool. So there you go. This is an extremely useful open source AI which you can use to create 3D environments for video games or animations or whatever. Here's another example. And again, I can press the WASD keys to interact with this. Very nice. Now, in addition to trying this online, the nice thing is they've also released all the models already on Hugging Face. However, some users have reported that it doesn't even work on 24 gigabytes of VRAM, so you need like a 5090 with 32 gigabytes in order to get this to work. I'm sure there's also going to be more quantized versions of this available in the future, but anyways, if you do have enough compute right now, at the bottom of this GitHub repo, here are all the instructions on how to download and run this locally on your computer. If you're interested in reading further, I'll link to this main page in the description below. In other news, Google DeepMind just released AlphaEarth Foundations. This basically uses AI to compress a ton of spatial data of planet Earth into one unified model. And this gives us a super high resolution of everything from like cloud cover, climate, land use, etc. This is the most detailed model of planet Earth. So here's how it works. Traditionally, we do have a ton of spatial data, but these are all kind of separate layers. For example, we can have like one layer map of only the Amazon forest cover. We can have another layer map of all the urban areas in the US, but all this spatial data is just separate. What AlphaEarth Foundation does is it basically merges all of this map data together into one unified model. And this is an insane resolution. That means you can take this model of planet Earth and zoom in on any particular location and view it with extreme precision and detail, as you can see here. They describe this as an AI that functions like a virtual satellite. It's basically able to compress a ton of spatial information into one unified digital representation of Earth. Think of it as like a digital twin. And this could help us map out a ton of things like deforestation or urban expansion, water resources, climate change, etc. And these are like petabytes of data. And it compresses all of this into a resolution of only 10 by 10 meters, which is an incredible resolution. This is way more detailed than traditional methods. And even though it processes a ton of data, it's actually able to compress this very efficiently. So here it says it requires 16 times less storage space compared to other AI systems. And this digital twin of planet Earth enables you to do a ton of things. You can track global changes like agriculture, urban expansion, deforestation with extremely high accuracy. Plus, they also found that AlphaEarth Foundations had a 24% lower error rate than other models. So not only is this like more efficient in terms of data size, but it's also more accurate. The awesome thing is they've already released a collection of their annual embeddings, or basically their yearly data summary, in Google Earth Engine. So if you're a scientist and you need to work with geospatial data, you can sign up to use Google Earth Engine over here. Anyways, props to Google DeepMind for creating yet another extremely useful application with AI. I mean, this company has created so much value for humanity and planet Earth. They've created AlphaFold, AlphaGenome, they've created MedGemma, which is an AI for medical analysis. They've created WeatherLab, which can help predict cyclones. They've created DolphinGemma, which can help decipher dolphin communication. And now they've released AlphaEarth Foundations, which is by far the most accurate and highest resolution reconstruction of planet Earth. Props to Google DeepMind for creating so much value for us. Anyways, if you're interested in reading further, I'll link to this main page in the description below. Next up, OpenAI releases a super useful feature, and this is even available for free users. So if you haven't noticed, in this tool's dropdown, there should be this new Study and Learn button. So let's click on this, and this basically acts like a guided tutor. It's designed to help you learn something step by step rather than just giving you a direct answer. And this encourages participation and critical thinking and also self-reflection. So let's try an example. Let's write teach me about cellular respiration, and then I will have the study mode on and then click generate. So instead of just giving me the answer, it actually asks me some questions. I don't know why it calls me Maple. I think it's way back when the 4.0 advanced voice came out, and that voice was called Maple. So that's what I called her. I don't know why it's somehow registered that my name should be Maple. Anyways, here it's first asking me like, how much do I know about this already? So I'm just going to answer, I don't know anything about this yet. All right, so here is its next answer. Let's start super simple. Here's the basic equation. No need to memorize this yet. And then it pauses there and then asks me a question. Why do you think a cell would need APT energy? What kinds of things might a cell use it for? So it's actually getting me to participate and think critically about this. So let's answer it needs energy to function. It might need it to move things or get rid of waste. And then here is its response. Next, it gives me the 3 stages of cellular respiration, and then it asks me another follow-up question. Which part of the cell do you think is in charge of making the most ATP, the cytoplasm or the mitochondria? And then it goes on and on. So that's just one example, but you can see how this study and learn feature can be so useful in helping you actually learn and understand any topic or language. Because it's actually pausing step by step and asking you questions at every step to get you to think, you actually learn a lot better. So definitely try this out. This is available to all ChatGPT users, including ones on the free plan. If you've been following my channel, you'll know that I'm obsessed with finding the best video generators out there. Well, recently I tried out Hera Video, the sponsor of this video, and this is seriously impressive. This is the only AI that can create professional motion graphic animations just from a text prompt. None of the other video generators like Veo, Sora, or Runway can do this accurately. For example, I'm gonna get it to create an animated bar graph with this data. And here's what we get. It actually follows the numbers and text in my prompt exactly. Or here's another example. Let's get it to create a map of USA, zoom in and highlight the state of California. And here is our result. This is so impressive. It's like generating a legit map of the USA and then zooming into California and then outlining California. Or let's try this. Showcase a weather app interface on an iPhone. Look how beautiful this is. You can easily use this to create product videos or commercials for any apps or websites. Let's see if it can actually follow all the text that I specify. So let's create an animated slide with all this text. And this time for the aspect ratio, I'm going to select vertical. This is so impressive. It makes this look beautiful. Finally, let's try an Instagram chat with the following messages. And here is what we get. Very nice. And notice that this has a built-in editor, so you can actually select and edit any component in the video. You can change the background color, change the text, resize the components. Plus, you can also add a follow-up prompt to edit it further. Traditionally, creating these animations would take a ton of time, but with Hera, it's super fast and easy. You don't need any advanced design skills or expensive software. I tested it with a ton of prompts and they all just work. Try Hera today via the link in the description below. In the past 2 weeks, we've had a ton of open source models from Chinese companies come out, which even beat some of the top proprietary closed source models out there. This includes Kimi K2 and Alibaba's Qwen 3. Well, this week we have another open source model also from a Chinese company, and this is called GLM 4.5 by ZAI. This is also state of the art. Now, they've actually released two variants, GLM 4.5 and GLM 4.5 Air. The full GLM 4.5 has 335 billion total parameters and 32 billion active parameters, whereas this Air is basically a lighter version with 106 billion parameters and 12 billion active parameters. Both of these are hybrid thinking models, which means you can turn on its thinking mode and get it to think for longer or handle more complex reasoning tasks. Or you can also turn it off for simpler tasks and it'll answer faster. Now check out the benchmark scores of GLM 4.5. It is absolutely incredible. So across 12 benchmarks, evaluating its agentic reasoning and coding abilities, you can see that GLM 4.5 even beats Claude 4 Opus and O4 Mini. And Gemini 2.5 Pro. That's pretty insane for an open source model which you can potentially download and use for free. It's only slightly behind Grok 4 and OpenAI's O3. And if you look at agentic performance, notice that GLM 4.5 is up here, even beating Grok 4, which was only just released. And then Qwen 3 and Kimi K2 are all the way down here. And then here are some other benchmark scores for your comparison. So as you can see overall, from this blue bar, which is the full version of GLM 4.5, it's as good or even better than some of the top proprietary models out there like Gemini 2.5 Pro and Claude and OpenAI's O3 and O4. It's also great at tool calling. This is basically testing its agentic capabilities to autonomously use other tools at its disposal to solve a particular task. So this can be like a Python coder, or this could be a web search tool, this could be a PowerPoint creator, etc. But as you can see here, GLM 4.5 has the highest success rate compared to these other models. So here are some of their demos. I'm also going to show you some of my personal demos in a second. Now let me open this up, but just a warning, the online platform does not have dark mode, so prepare to expose your eyes to maximum discomfort. Anyways, let me open this up, and over here, if you prompt it with write a Flappy Bird game for me in a single HTML file, here is what you get. So let's press start game, and I will press space to flap the bird. All right, and once I make it past each obstacle, then I get a point. Now let me try to crash over here, and once I do, then it's game over. Very nice. It's super impressive how it's able to just get this in one prompt, 0 shot. It's also great at creating slides and presentations. So here, if you get it to create a PowerPoint presentation introducing this guy's achievements in yesterday's Tour de France, here is what we get. You can also enable web search, which I'll show you in a second, so it can actually scrape the web and find relevant images like this. So you can see here it's like actually searching the web and finding the latest information about this year's Tour de France. And then afterwards, here is what we get. So here is a very beautifully designed presentation with relevant images, and the information is also correct. Very nice. And again, it did all of this from just one prompt. We didn't need to prompt it further. Super impressive. Or here's a classic Pokédex example. So if the prompt is build an interactive Pokédex featuring the first 50 Pokemon, including their animations and types, here is what we get. And you can even filter by type. So if we filter by electric, here is what we get. Or let's try fire, and here's what we get. And if I click on each one, it actually gives me all the stats, including abilities and height and weight. This is way more detailed than Gemini 2.5 Pro and Grok 4. Super impressive. The nice thing is you can try it for free on their online platform. So it's just z.ai. I'll link to it in the description below. Now again, unfortunately, they do not have dark mode. So I'm sorry your eyes have to go through this. But really quickly, here are all the settings. It's pretty similar to ChatGPT and QuenChat. So up at the top here is where you can select from all these different models, including 4.5 and 4.5 Air. Of course, we will go with the most performant 4.5. And then under Tools, you can select Web Search to get it to search the web and fetch the latest information for you if you need this for your prompt. And then you can also upload documents over here. So for my first prompt, I'm just going to turn off Web Search, and then let's test its coding ability. I'm going to get it to create a space shooter game where players pilot a ship through asteroid fields, dodging debris and firing lasers at alien invaders. Put everything in one HTML file. Let's press generate. Alright, and here is what we get. So I can use the arrow keys or WASD to move and space to fire. Let's press start. Alright, and indeed, we have a fully functional Space Invader game. Oh my god, this is so hard. And as you can see, when I shoot an alien, they do explode, and when I get hit, my shield in the top right corner does get lower. Very nice. So let me actually try to lose here, so let me hit an alien. Perfect, so when the shield goes to 0, then it's game over, and here is my final score. So from just one prompt, it has given me a fully functional Space Invader game with actually pretty good animations like particle explosions. Plus, the ship and the enemies actually look decent compared to Gemini 2.5 or Grok or O3, which kind of just give me really basic shapes. I'm very impressed by this. Alright, next, let's try this. Create a cryptocurrency portfolio dashboard showing price fluctuations with animated lines, risk assessments, and trade simulators. Put everything in a single HTML file. Let's press generate. And here is what we get. Very nice. Now notice that the price is not perfect, but I didn't turn on web search, so it's not really pulling from the latest price data. This is just a simulation of what it should look like. And you can see it's like simulating these cards updating in real time. And then over here, this is the price trend, and it's actually synced to my clock. So it is indeed 6:24 right now. This is super impressive. And then here we have some risk assessment. Here it even gives us a trade simulator. So let's try Bitcoin, and then let's buy like 200 USD. And then once we click buy, it has a nice pop-up over here. Plus, it shows our transaction over here. And again, I just entered one prompt. You can see on the left here, I didn't need to add any follow-up prompts to this. Now, of course, I can to make this even better and add more capabilities. But as you can see, from just one prompt, 0 shot, it already was able to give me an amazing dashboard with a ton of functional capabilities. Or let's try this. Build a color palette generator that extracts colors from uploaded images, suggests harmonies, and exports schemes for design projects. Let's see what that gives us. All right, and here's what we get. Again, this is just from one prompt. Let me upload an image. So I'm going to upload this image, and as you can see, it automatically extracts the colors from this image. And then I can select some harmonies. So let's see what monochromatic is. Very nice. And then here's analogous. Here's complementary. Here's triadic. And then here are some other harmonies for your reference. Very cool. And then I can also export the palette into all these different formats, plus I can also copy the hex code. And by the way, all these color cards also have the relevant hex codes. Everything just works perfectly. Again, super impressive how it's able to just generate all of this in just one prompt, whereas even for some of the state-of-the-art models out there, usually I need to prompt it 2 or 3 times before it can actually create something fully functional without any errors. Alright, next let's get it to create a 3JS scene. This is a library used to create 3D animations, and we are going to simulate a supernova explosion, from core collapse to expanding remnants with shockwave visuals. Let's see what that gives us. Alright, here is what we get. So right now it's doing this core collapse, and whoa, we have this supernova expansion, and now it's at the stage of expanding remnants. Very interesting. You can also increase the animation speed, decrease or increase the camera distance. Let me try to restart this again. So it's stable, now it's doing core collapse, and then it's doing the supernova explosion. Very nice. Finally, I also want to test its thinking and reasoning and analysis capabilities, so here is a tricky medical question. For a newborn with congenital heart defects, research surgical options and long-term prognoses. Suggest monitoring steps, genetic counseling, compile into basically a comprehensive health report. Let's press generate. And here is what we get. So here it gives us a really thorough table of all the common types of congenital heart defects with surgical options, long-term prognosis, and key risks. And then here it gives us monitoring steps depending on the age of the patient, plus lifelong surveillance. Here is genetic counseling, yada yada yada. And then here are some survival rate charts and a conclusion with relevant references. Now, the nice thing is, in addition to using it for free online, they've also released everything already. This is completely free and open source. So if you click on Hugging Face, they've released both the 4.5 and the 4.5 Air models. Plus, they also have an FP8 version, which is slightly more compressed. And then if you click on this GitHub repo, this contains all the instructions on how to download and run this locally on your computer. All the links are up here, so if you're interested, I'll link to this main page in the description below for you to read further. Next up, this AI signals the end of me. So Google just released a new feature called Video Overviews, and this is located in their platform called NotebookLM. If you haven't heard of NotebookLM, this is a super powerful platform where you can basically create what they call a notebook, and then you can upload any source of information, such as PDFs of your lecture notes or documents or research reports, or you can also select from files in your Google Drive, or you can also just link it to a website or a YouTube video, or you can also just paste the text from an article into here. And this basically processes the information and creates kind of a study guide for you. So for example, I'm just going to enter a website and I'm going to paste the URL over here. Notice that, by the way, you can paste multiple URLs into this. So I'm going to paste this page, which basically explains Google's Earth engine, and then let's press insert. And then afterwards, notice that it processes the information, and then you can ask it questions about this article in this chat interface over here. But in addition to this, you can also click on Audio Overview, and it would generate a podcast with 2 hosts talking about your uploaded source. So if you're an audio listener, this is super helpful. But anyways, this feature was released months ago, so that's old news. What they released this week is a new feature called Video Overview. This basically creates an explainer video with audio that describes whatever source of information you uploaded. So after clicking on Video Overview, it actually loads pretty fast. And then here's the explainer video that I got. Let me play this for you.
Hey, welcome back. So what if you could search the entire planet? I'm not talking about searching for, words or pictures. I mean searching for real, actual physical changes to the Earth's surface over decades. Well, today we're digging into the tool that makes that possible, and it's called Google Earth Engine. All right, to really get a sense of the scale here, just look at this number, 80 plus petabytes of data. Now, what does that even mean? Well, 1 petabyte is 1,000 terabytes. It's enough to store millions of HD movies. So now imagine over 80 times that amount, all focused on our planet, and here's the crazy part. All of it is instantly ready for you to analyze.
Yeah, that number it's just almost impossible to wrap your head around. So let's break it down. What is this massive thing, really?
Okay, so here's the official definition. And I want you to notice there are two really critical parts to this. First, you've got the multi-petabyte catalog. That's the giant library of satellite images we were just talking about. But then, and this is just as important, you have the planetary scale analysis capabilities. See, it's not just a big photo album. It's a toolbox that lets you ask that photo album some really, really big questions.
So how do you even begin to process that much data?
I mean, you need an absolutely incredible amount of computing power. And that's where Google's cloud infrastructure comes into play. Think of it as the massive engine under the hood that makes searching an entire planet possible. You know, without your laptop literally melting.
Okay, so we know what it is, right? It's this huge data library combined with a super powerful analytical engine. But how does it actually work? How do you get from all that raw data to, actual answers?
At its heart, it really boils down to a pretty simple but incredibly powerful formula. You take the satellite imagery, this massive library of it, then you add your algorithms. So your specific questions, the trends you're trying to find, and when you put those two together, you get real-world applications. You get answers about our changing planet.
So you might be wondering, who gets to use this stuff? Well, the platform actually has really deep roots in the scientific world. It's still totally free for academics and researchers who are doing non-commercial work. But, and this is a big deal, it's also been opened up for commercial use now. That means businesses can tap into all this planetary data for their own projects too.
So that was just the first few minutes of this video, but as you can see, I am so screwed. With this feature, you no longer need to view my AI News videos, because, well, you can just paste in some links to AI News articles, feed it through this AI, and then press video overview, and it would generate basically what I make on YouTube. But anyways, if you're a visual and audio learner, this can be such a useful tool. You can upload your lecture notes onto here and then generate explainer videos, which you can watch whenever. And this is actually fine-tuned to explain this very well. And this platform is completely free to use, which is fantastic. Anyways, if you're interested in trying this out, I'll link to NotebookLM in the description below. You should automatically see this video overview button over here. In other news, Alibaba Qwen releases another state-of-the-art model. So last week, they've already released Qwen 3 235B, and they released both a reasoning model and a non-reasoning model. Now, what's especially impressive is that for this reasoning model, this is the best open source thinking model that you can use right now. Everything above it over here, these are all proprietary and closed source. But for this one, I mean, if you have enough compute, you can run this locally, you can fine-tune it and tweak it however you want. So props to Alibaba for actually releasing this. Now, this week, they've released a smaller variant called Qwen 3 30B, and this is also a mixture of experts model. So think of it as like a team of AI agents working together to help you solve a problem. And this one has 30 billion parameters. So it's much smaller than this 235 billion parameter model, so it's not as performant. However, because of its smaller size, developers can easily download and run this locally and play around with it or fine-tune it. This can be easily run on most consumer-grade GPUs. And if you compare this with Gemini 2.5 Flash, which is a closed model, we're not sure what its size is, but this is like a smaller variant of Gemini 2.5, you can see that for most of these benchmarks, Qwen 3, which is the red bar, is actually on par with Gemini 2.5 Flash. And it's especially impressive in terms of competitive math. Now, you can try Qwen 3 30B for free using this online interface. So I've gone over this interface in my previous news video, so I won't repeat too much here, but you can select Qwen 3 30B from this dropdown over here, and then you can use this just like ChatGPT. In addition to this online interface, on this Hugging Face page, if you scroll down a bit, this includes all the instructions on how to download and run this locally on your computer. So if you're interested in reading further, especially if you're a developer and you want to tinker with this model locally, I'll link to this page in the description below for you to read further. In other news, Google just released Gemini 2.5 DeepThink. As the name implies, this allows Gemini to think even longer and deeper, and this is especially effective at tackling really complex reasoning tasks like science or competitive math problems. In fact, It seems like the full version of this is the one that got a gold medal in this year's International Mathematical Olympiad. Yes, there's an Olympics where the best and smartest people in the world compete to solve a set of really hard math problems at this event. These are some of the toughest math questions in the world, and usually each question requires a ton of thinking and a ton of time to solve. Now, this isn't exactly the model that got the gold medal at this Olympics. They say that the deepthink feature that they're releasing is a variation of that model. And specifically, it uses what they call parallel thinking techniques. This basically allows Gemini to generate many ideas at once and consider them simultaneously. It's kind of like Grok 4 heavy. So instead of just one AI doing the work, think of it as like an army of AI agents which can each think of ideas, and they can also work together and revise and combine different ideas over time to arrive at the best answer. And they designed this with a new reinforcement learning technique. Now, of course, Gemini is closed source, so we don't actually know the nitty-gritty technical details about this technique. But anyways, here's an example to show you how insanely good deepthink is. If you get it to create a creative, elaborate, and detailed voxel art scene of a pagoda in a beautiful garden with trees, including some cherry blossoms, notice Gemini 2.5 Flash is pretty basic. It doesn't really look like a pagoda, and the trees don't really look like trees. And then Gemini 2.5 Pro is a bit better. However, this building still doesn't really look like a pagoda. However, if you get deepthink to do this, then it looks way better, as you can see over here. And then here are some benchmark scores for your reference. In terms of humanity's last exam, which basically tests an AI's knowledge on really obscure and specialized scientific subjects, you can see that Gemini with deepthink vastly outperforms Gemini 2.5 Pro by like over 10%. It also beats other competitors like O3 and Grok. And then for code generation, this is also better than competitors. Same with competitive math. As you can see, this line indicates the bronze medal, and then Gemini deepthink got way above that mark. Here's another competitive math benchmark, and as you can see, Gemini 2.5 got 99.2%. However, note that this isn't really comparing apples to apples, because they're just comparing deepthink with the regular base models of competitors. So of course, they're gonna perform worse. If you also add longer thinking to these competitor models, for example, O3 has a high version and then Grok 4 has a heavy version, then they are also expected to perform better. So this isn't really a valid comparison. But anyways, this deepthink feature basically shows us that we aren't hitting any wall. You can definitely make existing models even more intelligent or performant just by extending their thinking time and getting multiple models to think in parallel. Now, unfortunately, this deepthink feature is only available if you are subscribed to Google's most expensive plan, which is called Google AI Ultra. And normally this costs $250 a month. I guess this deepthink feature is still worth it if you really need to do extremely deep research, like if you're in medicine, but for the rest of us, you probably don't need such a crazy model for everyday tasks. Anyways, if you're interested in reading further, I'll link to this announcement page in the description below. Next up, Black Forest Labs, who's the company behind one of the best open source image models out there called Flux, just released a new open source variant. This time it's called Flux Krea Dev, in collaboration with Krea AI. And this model aims to fix a really common problem in AI-generated images, which tend to look too plasticky and oversaturated. Well, instead, this model was fine-tuned to create more natural, high-quality visuals that actually look realistic. Now, they call this an opinionated text-to-image model because it doesn't just follow your prompt exactly. It kind of adds some artistic variety to this to give you what they call some pleasantly surprising results. And if you look at some benchmark scores, this new Flux Krea does perform better than the previous open source version, which is just Flux Dev. The awesome thing is this is already available for you to download and run locally on your computer for free and offline. However, one thing to note is that for Black Forest Labs, they do have quite a restrictive license, so you can't really use this much for commercial purposes. But if you're just using it for yourself and you're generating things offline, then it doesn't really matter. Now, there are several ways for you to use Flux Krea Dev. One way is to use it online, and you can use it on Krea. I'll link to this page in the description below, and you simply enter a prompt here and then click generate. So let me enter this prompt: a woman in a red dress dancing in a nightclub. Hard flash, amateur, low quality photo. Let's press generate and see what that gives us. And the cool thing is you can actually see the diffusion process as it generates the image. And then here's the final result. So you can see this is a lot more realistic. It's less polished and less perfect than the AI generated images that you're used to previously. This actually looks like an amateur photo that was just randomly taken at a nightclub. Notice that there are still some errors with the hands and fingers sometimes, but in most cases, Flux does tend to generate pretty good fingers. Now note that if you generate images using this page, then it only outputs a 1024 by 1024 image. If you want to generate different aspect ratios, then here's another place you can use this. This is a free Hugging Face space by Black Forest Labs themselves, and here's where you would enter your prompt. But in addition, if you expand these advanced settings, here's where you can adjust the width and height. So for example, let's adjust the width to 768, and then guidance is like how literally you want the AI to follow your prompt. So a higher value would get it to follow your prompt really literally and generate everything you specify, whereas a lower value would allow it to add some more creativity and variance to your image. Let's just set it back to the default of 4.5, and then number of inference steps is like how many iterations you want it to go through before outputting your final image. So in general, the more steps you have, the higher quality it will be, but you're going to get diminishing returns at a certain point. And then setting it to lower steps would make the generation faster, but at the sacrifice of some quality. Again, for me, I'm just going to leave it at the default of 28. And then over here for the prompt, let's try this. A male DJ with bleached blonde hair and neck tattoos stands behind a mixing board in a smoky, dimly lit club. Let's click run. And the cool thing is you can see the diffusion process as it generates the image. So it starts with noise, and then after every step it takes away some of that noise, and eventually this is what you get. And as you can see, this also looks very realistic. It's just not as polished or perfect as traditional AI generated images. Or let's try another example. I'm going to write a woman running down a grocery store aisle, motion blur, amateur photo, irregular angle. Let's click run. Alright, so you can see the diffusion process, and here is our final result. So you can see, again, this is a woman running down a grocery store aisle, and it does have motion blur, and this looks like a pretty normal, realistic photo. I mean, if I saw this, I would not suspect that it was AI generated. Now, in addition to using these two platforms online, of course, this is already open source, so you can download and run this for unlimited times offline. They've already released the models on Hugging Face, so down here, this contains all the instructions on how to download and run this in Comfy UI or diffusers. Anyways, if you're interested in reading further, I'll link to this main release page in the description below. In humanoid robot news, finally, we have a robot that can do laundry. So Figure AI just released a new demo of their Figure 02 robot doing laundry. And this is powered by their Helix model, which is like the brain of the robot. But to be fair, it's only doing the easiest part, which is like tossing the clothes into the washer. The clothes are pretty light and pretty easy to grasp, plus the basket is pretty big and the opening is hard to miss. So it's definitely not hard to do this task, even for a humanoid robot. Plus, that's the only part they showed, so I don't know if it could also read the interface and press the appropriate buttons to actually start the washing machine. Nevertheless, this is a good start. I'm sure a lot of people, including myself, would like a humanoid robot to help us do the laundry, wash dishes, take out the trash, and take care of kids. Let me know in the comments below what you think of this. In other humanoid robot news, a few weeks ago I featured this new dancing robot called LimX CL3. Well, this week the company LimX Dynamics released yet another robot model, and this time it's called LimX Oli. This is a full-size humanoid robot that's 1.65 meters tall and has 31 degrees of freedom, making it pretty flexible. And indeed, this can do a ton of different things. Of course, it can walk around like this very naturally. It can also work out at the gym, and it seems like it's able to lift some pretty decent weights while walking. And then it can also do some kung fu in the park like this. Not bad. And then here it's like navigating to this factory, and as you can see, it's able to autonomously detect its target object and then pick it up and then drop it onto this cart. So, this robot could be potentially very useful in automating tasks in logistics and warehouses. And then here you can see it's also able to pick up these small objects and autonomously sort them appropriately. It even knows how to, throw this in the trash. And I would say this sorting task is actually way more impressive than the Figure 02 laundry demo. And that's because these items are a lot smaller, plus it actually needs to sort these items, plus the compartments are also smaller. So it's a lot more challenging to actually execute this task. And then finally, as you can see over here, it can also kind of attempt to dance. It's kind of cute, if I must say so myself. But anyways, that is the latest demo by this new humanoid robot called LimX Oli. Next up, one of my favorite image generators called Ideogram has released a new and very impressive feature. It's called Ideogram Character, and this allows you to basically create deepfakes of anyone just by uploading one photo. And this is one of the most realistic and highest fidelity deepfake tools I've seen so far. Now, previously, in order to create deepfakes, you need to train a LoRa, or basically a fine-tune, on multiple images of a person, ideally at different angles, plus you also need the appropriate text description of each image. Now, of course, this takes a lot of time and effort, and you need multiple photos. Now, there are other ways you can create deepfakes by just uploading one image. For example, you can use a tool called Instant ID, and this is actually pretty good. So for example, you can create deepfakes like this just with one reference image. Here's another example. Or another tool is called Pooled, and this also just requires one reference image. But sometimes for these tools, it's hit or miss. So for example, it's really hard to generate photos of a person at different angles. Because if you upload just one image, then it only has data of that person's face at that particular angle. It's really hard for the AI to actually guess what the person would look like from other perspectives. But here's where this new Ideogram Character feature is so much better. It actually creates a super accurate deepfake of anyone doing anything at any angle from just one photo. So here's an example. If you upload this reference image, you can generate, these photos of him in different environments doing different things, and all of these photos actually look like this original dude. Or here's another example. If you upload this image of a woman, notice that it's also super blurry, but it's still able to, capture her face, and then you can generate different photos of her doing different things. Now, those are just some of their showcased examples. Let's actually test this out ourselves. So let's click on Try Ideogram Character. And the first step is to upload an image of someone. So, of course, I'm going to upload Will Smith. And then you can see over here, it automatically actually masks his face from the rest of the image. So if I click on this, you can see that it automatically applied this mask, but you can also change this mask if you want. So if you want to add like more hair to him, or if you want to remove his hair so you can generate a different hairstyle on him, then you would also mask this out. But anyways, I'm just going to leave it at the default. And then for the prompt, let's write he is wearing a Jedi robe, holding a lightsaber. And then for the aspect ratio, you can choose from all of these. I'm just going to leave it at 16:9. For the model, you can choose turbo, default, and quality. Of course, the quality one is going to cost more credits, so let's just leave it at turbo. And then you can also choose from realistic or fiction. Let's just choose realistic, and then over here you can also choose from all these different templates. But because I've already added a prompt and I just want to get him to wear a Jedi robe and hold a lightsaber, that's all I really need to do. I don't really need to use this template feature. So let's click generate. Alright, so here is our first image, and indeed he's wearing a Jedi robe and he's holding a lightsaber, and this looks exactly like Will Smith. Very nice. And then here's the second image. Again, this is Will Smith wearing a Jedi robe, holding a lightsaber. He does have 5 fingers, and his face looks exactly like Will Smith. Alright, next I'm going to upload this photo of a woman, and then again you can see over here, it's automatically applying a mask to her face and hair, and this is already pretty good, so let's go with the default. And then for the prompt, I'm going to put she is wearing a black bikini. running away from a massive explosion in the background. Motion blur, high action. Let's press generate. Alright, so here is the first image. She is indeed running away from a massive explosion in the background. She is wearing a black bikini, and this does look like the original photo that I uploaded. And then here is photo number 2. Again, she looks exactly like my reference character. So this is really good. Now, instead of a front view, let's try side view. She is wearing a black dress on a rooftop overlooking the city, and it's going to be sunset. This time, let's also set the aspect ratio to vertical, and then let's press generate. Alright, so here is image number 1. This is a side view of her, and it still looks like the original photo. And then here is the second photo. Again, this is a pretty decent side view of this reference character. Note that Ideogram is paid and closed source, but this is one of the top image generators out there. And you can sign up for free, and you do get some slow credits, so you can start generating photos using Ideogram Character right away for free. Anyways, if you're interested, I'll link to this release page in the description below for you to read further. And that sums up all the highlights in AI this week. Let me know in the comments what you think of all of this. Which piece of news was your favorite, and which tool are you most looking forward to trying out? As always, I will be on the lookout for the top AI news and tools to share with you. So if you enjoyed this video, remember to like, share, subscribe, and stay tuned for more content. Also, there's just so much happening in the world of AI every week. I can't possibly cover everything on my YouTube channel. So to really stay up to date with all that's going on in AI, be sure to subscribe to my free weekly newsletter. The link to that will be in the description below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.